I think our goals at the Sheriff's Office are consistent with what you've laid out, and I've certainly heard loud and clear in terms of where we're heading in transforming justice systems and making sure we have a top priority of racial equity and outreach to the community. Our budget, I think, maybe in and of itself doesn't reflect that, because as you know, our budget really is a status quo budget. This budget has exactly the same bodies that were last year, with the exception of 5 new bodies to help run the body camera project. The body camera project is important, however, in that it helps build trust and better relationships with the community when they know that there's some accountability for the deputies' actions. So that's a big component in making sure that we continue to service the community in a way that has trust and openness. Two of the things that didn't make the cut, and we could have some conversation about this, is we continue to believe that we need to transform the detention system, and we need to treat people in a way that recognizes that we want them to leave our detention facility at least as prepared or better than when they came in, whether that's treatment for mental health, for addiction, or educational services. Our goal at the Sheriff's Office is find a way to make sure we can help those individuals leave more prepared. And so that's a complicated mix, of course, and I know your county manager is very concerned about it, and working the improvements in healthcare there, while I was gone, were dramatic. I compliment you there. The continuing work on mental health is improving. We've been spending a lot of time meeting with Hennepin County and other opioid treatment providers to figure out how we can better address the opioid addiction problem in our jail. There's a strong correlation between people that are released from jail and detention and prison and actual overdose deaths. And we're tracking that. And at some point in the next year, I hope to bring something to you, working with Ryan, on how we can better address that for people that are in custody as well. And that might include the treatment of Suboxone and other methadone, if you will, for people that are in custody, so that we can make sure they're not going on again, off again for their medication. But it's detention reform is complex. Of course, you're all familiar with the infamous video that occurred 3 years ago, and we've taken dramatic steps in the last months to change the culture in the jail. Frankly, we've had department-wide meetings, supervisor meetings, reviewing that video and talking about things that just simply can't be tolerated. We did add some temporary ombudsmen to the jail, some civilian eyes, if you will, to watch what's happening. We think all of these things have had a dramatic impact on the way our people perform in the detention division. We did propose a permanent solution of having 2 to 3 ombudsmen there. That did not make the cut. It's possible that the addition of cameras in the jail will accomplish that same goal of having some additional eyes on. So I'm not here pushing for those additional ombudsmen for next year, but I would like you to consider in the future that having some civilian eyes in the jail does hold people accountable. So they report directly to Bill Finney, Under Sheriff Bill Finney, and he's already brought back some significant changes that we think help improve that culture. So that's a piece of where we think we need to go with detention reform. As you probably saw, last month we opened up in-person visitation. That's really never done anywhere, but if we want people to succeed when they get out, they have to have that support network of family and possibly friends and children while they're in the facility. So every Monday, for inmates that have a good performance record, we allow them to call their family members in and meet in a positive, constructive, sit down, relax, and have some hugging of their children so that they can continue to have that support network when they get out. And you're all welcome. I think Commissioner Carter has maybe seen the room that we do that. You're all welcome to come over and be a part of that if you'd like. So detention reform is key. We're working with the judges and other committees in John Choi's office on reducing bail and getting people out of the jail. Just so you know, we're not arguing to keep people in our facility. We don't think a lot of great things happen in there. We'd rather get them out to some treatment programs or some support network. There is an argument that some of them do detox while they're in our facility and get back on a better path. There are people that come in there on meth that are very high on meth, and really it's probably not in their best interest to be released in that first day or two. But in general, if we can get a person into a treatment program instead of incarcerating them, we're all supportive of that. So there's some discussion going about allowing the sheriff's office to release people at an earlier stage, and we think that legally we probably have the right to do that, but we would like the sanction of some of the committees that are meeting to discuss that. So that's our goal in detention reform. I will tell you that we're also training our employees with a better understanding of who the community is, because it's an interesting thing. You talk about community engagement, and the sheriff's office community engagement for the most part is all in the suburbs, and we're trying to change that. You think about it, many of the people that come in contact with our jail facility are not from the suburbs, and our employees themselves have little or no other contact than in the jail context. So one of the things, if you think about the number of people that come into our custody and where they're from, it's incumbent upon us to build relationships with those communities outside of the custodial component that we're in. So that's part of the Rice Street office concept, but I will tell you that we had a little hot dog with the deputy. It's the first hot dog with the deputy event that we've had that wasn't in the suburbs. We had hundreds of people show up, and what struck me was that our employees were exposed to a completely different side of the community that normally they're only exposed to in the jail context or in a law enforcement context, or a small percentage of that in the suburbs. So it's not just building the trust from the community, it's training your employees to understand the needs and the lives of real human beings in the city. And I'm very thankful that I've had the kind of career where I got to work with a wide, diverse community over my law enforcement career, and it gives you a much better perspective. In that venue, you know that on the outreach side, we've restored our youth program using one of our inspectors and a lot of volunteers. We're trying to make some inroads in the Karen community. We've been working directly with the Karen community of Minnesota and have reading programs and sports programs that have been initiated. We've long had great relationships with the Hmong community that are continuing. Met with the Mexican consulate last week to start establishing a relationship with the Latino community here and do some outreach. It's not just outreach for the sake of outreach, it's outreach for the sake of helping people succeed. And one of the things I've learned along the way is if you really want to establish a relationship with any community, it doesn't matter who they are, help their children. If you help the children of a community, they know you're genuine. If you just show up at meetings and you say a few nice platitudes, that really doesn't carry the day. You actually have to do something constructive to help their kids educate themselves. Because the one common goal of every parent of every race and ethnicity is they want the next generation of their children to do better than they did. They want their children to get to the next plateau. So that's really our theme, and where we're trying to go and touching children in our efforts to connect with community. So I think those goals are all consistent with where you're headed, and frankly, we're out there every day having contact with the community. If we're not in the right areas or we're not touching the right stones or whatever it might be, let us know, because I think the mission that we've established is consistent with the goals that you've outlined. I did propose in this budget as well the hiring of some community service officers. That was not supported. I've been told by Scott and others that there might be a possibility of those officers being funded in this new initiative that you're putting together with the $3 million to do some racial equity and outreach efforts. I hope we get some consideration there, but I do think people like John Thompson, that you're all familiar with, those are the kind of people we need to have working with us on a hand-to-hand basis that are reaching out to the community to address concerns of the community, people that have been close and come from those crisis situations, and rather than traditional law enforcement people. I do have people at the sheriff's office that says, well, what are you trying to do there, Sheriff? Because they don't quite understand some of the rhetoric that goes on from the community that's anti-police, anti-deputy. But it's important that we embrace that rhetoric, listen to it, and try to work through it. There was a committee meeting up at the Capitol with Mr. Ellison and Mr. Harrington. The first hour and 40 minutes of that committee meeting were disrupted by people that wanted to be heard. They wanted to have this is a committee regarding investigations of officer-involved shootings and critical incidents. So there is a lot of people that need to be heard, and they deserve to be heard. You can't really start at ground zero until they're comfortable that you know what they're feeling and what they're thinking. So this goes back to the community service officer concept. I think we need, and I don't know whether it works for public health or John Choi or us, but we've proposed that we have outreach workers that are in touch with the community that can help build that relationship. So that's where we're really at. The body camera project is proceeding on course. We've been told the last month that the shipping of the cameras is September 4th now? Yes. Steve? September 4th, the cameras will arrive. As you know, we had the discussion of the policy. We'll begin implementing the cameras on the deputies in September. And then by October 1st, I think I promised you we would bring a policy for the body cameras in the jail. We have a draft, we've worked that up, and so sometime in the next 2 to 3 weeks, we'll have a draft of a body camera policy for the jail. And then, you can tweak that or decide what you think is better or worse. Again, I think it works best with some civilian people maybe monitoring those cameras, even if they're not in the jail. I'm not sure if we'll have enough staff actually to look at those often enough, but if a complaint comes up, we'll be able to, of course, go back and take a look at them. So all is well at this point. I think we're on track. I think we want to partner and collaborate. I know there was a question. I was watching the earlier conversation about gun violence. We're very concerned about this. I met with the governor 2 weeks ago, and I told him it's time. I said, you can count me in to help on making sure that, we get some legislation on universal background checks and red flag laws. There will be no acceptance of the community if we don't begin taking some significant actions to reduce the amount of gun violence and mass shootings that occur. So I'm glad to answer any questions about the budget.